Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Father Mark. Today we're going to be continuing with spiritual friendship, and it's a great blessing to have you here. I'm in my little chapel, my room, just different place, different way of doing things today. Anyways, we moved on to chapter 2 in our book, Spiritual Friendship, and it's basically spiritual friendship, acceptance, unconditional love in a conditional world. And so you might want to pause right now and actually go to the Bible. It's a wonderful place to start, of course, and during this chapter, especially when we're going to be talking and focusing on that love, that agape love, I recommend three parts of the Bible. One is St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. I believe it's chapter 13. Yeah, read the whole chapter. Or you can go to the book of Ruth. If you don't know the story of Ruth, you might want to refamiliarize yourself with it. And read it and kind of get the sense of what we're going to be talking about. Then, of course, you can go to Psalm 96, especially the first couple verses of Psalm 96. They really talk about the deepness of friendship and what it means. So we're going to pause. I'm glad you're back. I hope you had a good time delving into one of those three stories of the Bible, one of those three parts of the Bible, or if all three. Wonderful. You're an overachiever. But so where are we going to go now? So let's start with that quote from St. Francis de Sales. What is there to be loved and desired if friendship is not? And I think that begins to form the basis, right? God desires us to be called friends, to enter into that friendship with another. And it is that self-gift of another. And so I'm going to be quoting a little bit here heavily at the very beginning. But here's a quote from Richard Rohr's book, What Mystics Know. He says, what we experience when we identify with the beloved, this is the achievement of the saints and the mystics. It is not, I love you by choice or devotion, but I am you. That's the identification that happens on the spiritual journey. As Jesus put it, I and the Father are one. So spiritual friendship begins with this identification, as Father Rohr said, of knowing the other as another you. We've already talked about how that begins to look, those processes, those steps that we move forward. But when we begin that spiritual friendship, that deep spiritual friendship, much like with Ruth had, right, where at the very beginning, with all the tragedy, with all this stuff surrounding her, she looks at her mother-in-law, says, I am with you. Your God is my God. Wherever you go, I will go. When, in truth, Ruth had everything to gain by abandoning her mother-in-law at that point. She was going with a woman who was destitute, who had no friends, no family left. And she could have went back to her own family. It wouldn't have been the perfect situation, but certainly much more secure than heading off to a foreign country with a widow and whatever would happen would happen. But Ruth, for some reason, saw in her mother-in-law, through the love her mother-in-law had for her sons and then for her daughter-in-laws, she saw herself and she desired to enter into that with another. And that's what we really look like when we begin to identify someone as a spiritual friend. We begin to see them as another self. It is where that generosity and gratitude really begin to form a place that is mirrored in the relationship we have with God. So now let's just step back there. What does that mean? Well, that means that we must have a good relationship with God. Right? They kind of go hand in hand. Right? There is that strength of life that we have to have with God, that connection. And yet our spiritual friend helps us to get that connection. Right? It's kind of this, if I don't have one, then it's hard to have the other. But I have to have them both, where they become united in that unity of love that is, we were reminded when what Jesus said, that quote, I and the Father are one. We become one with another. That doesn't mean that we are constantly with them or constant conversation with them, but we begin to seek the better of them because it brings out the better in us. It is that joy of life and living. And so you might want to start thinking about that example as you read those three Bible verses, those three parts of the Bible that I recommended to you at the very beginning. But you might begin to think, okay, now that I begin to identify this, how do I then see myself in the other? And how do I see the other in myself? And once again, spiritual friends aren't like dozens and dozens. They become that 1, 2, 3, 4 handful of intimate friends that we have. And so in the next video, I'm going to talk about a little bit deeper about what that means as we go forward, especially with generosity and gratitude, that reciprocalness, right? Can I be grateful if I'm not generous? Can I be generous if I'm not grateful? And how does that work with friendship? Anyways, that's our little clip for today. I hope to have 1 or 2 more out this week. I'm sorry, last week it just became impossible to sit down and actually think about it. But please continue to pray for your parish priests, your bishop, our Bishop Cantu here in the Diocese of San Jose, and all of those who lead our church during this very difficult time, that they may have a good spiritual friend that they can sit and talk with and share the love of Christ. Anyways, God bless you, and we will see you very soon.